Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. So Hare Krishna and welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class this morning. I assume for you this is new. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tadochayam Mudhirayet Nasta Prayeshu Bhatarishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Jagannath Baladev Subhachati ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. So we continue reading from the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 13, entitled Rahugana Converses with Jada Bharat, text number 8. Chalan Kvachit Kantaka Sharkaran Grihir Nagaru Rukshur Vimana Ivaste Pade Pade Pyantara Vaninardita Kautumbika Krutyati Vai Janaya Chalan Kvachit Kanta Sharkarang Chalan Kvachit Kanta Sharkaran Grir Chalan Kvachit Kanta Sharkaran Grir Nagarurukshur Vimana Ivaste Nagarurukshur Vimana Ivaste Pade Pade Byantaravani Nardita Pade Pade Byantaravani Nardita Kaudumbika Krutyati Vaijanaya Kaudumbika Krutyati Vaijanaya Jalan Kvachit Kantaka Sharkarangrir Nagarurukshur vimana ivaste. Pade pade byantaravani nardita. Kaudumbika krutyati vajanaya. Jalan kvachit kantaka sharkarangrir. Nagarurukshur vimana ivaste. Pade pade byantaravani nardita. Kaudumbika krutyati vajanaya. Jalan, wandering. Kvachit, sometimes. Kantaka sharkara, pierced by thorns and small stones. Angrihi, whose feet. Naga, the hills. Arurukshu, one desiring to climb. Vimanaha, disappointed. Iva, like. Aste, becomes. Pade pade, step by step. Abhyantara, within the abdomen. Vahina, by the strong fire of appetite. Arditaha, being fatigued and aggrieved. Kaudumbikaha, a person living with his family members. Krutyati, becomes angry. Why? Certainly. Janaya, at the family members. Translation, purport, Western Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sometimes the merchant in the forest wants to climb the hills and mountains, but due to insufficient footwear, his feet are pricked by small stone fragments and by thorns on the mountain. Being pricked by them, he becomes very aggrieved. Sometimes a person who is very attached to his family becomes overwhelmed with hunger, and due to his miserable condition, he becomes furious with his family members. Purport. The ambitious, conditioned soul wants to be very happy in this material world with his family, but he is compared to a traveler in the forest who desires to climb a hill full of thorns and small stones. As stated in the previous verse, the happiness derived from society, friendship, and love is like a drop of water in the scorching heat of the desert. One may want to become very great and powerful in society, but this is like attempting to climb a hill full of thorns. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares one's family to high mountains. Becoming happy in their association is like a hungry man's endeavoring to climb a mountain full of thorns. Almost 99.9% of the population is unhappy in family life, despite all the attempts being made to satisfy the family members. In the Western countries, due to dissatisfaction of the family members, there's actually no family life. There are many cases of divorce, and out of dissatisfaction, the children have to leave the protection of their parents. Especially in this age of Kali, family life is being reduced. Everyone is becoming self-centered because that is the law of nature. Even if one has sufficient money to maintain a family, the situation is such that no one is happy in family life. Consequently, according to the Van Ashram institution, one has to retire from family life in middle age. Panchashotvam vanam vrachet. One should voluntarily retire from family life at the age of 50 and go to Vrindavan or a forest. This is recommended by Srila Prahlad Maharaj. Tatsadu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvikna diyam asat grahat hidvatma patam griham andakupam vanam gato yattarim shrayeta. There is no benefit in transferring from one forest to another. One must go to the Vrindavan forest and take shelter of Govinda. That will make one happy. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is therefore constructing a Krishna Balaram temple to invite its members as well as outsiders to come and live peacefully in a spiritual atmosphere. That will help one become elevated to the transcendental world and return home, back to Godhead. Another sentence in this verse is very significant. Kadumbika krudyati vaijanaya. When one's mind is disturbed in so many ways, he satisfies himself by becoming angry with his poor wife and children. The wife and children are naturally dependent on the father, but the father, being unable to maintain the family properly, becomes mentally distressed and therefore chastises the family members unnecessarily. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 12:9, Akchina dara dravina yasyanti giri kananam. Being disgusted with family life, one separates from the family by divorce or some other means. If one has to separate, why not separate willingly? Systematic separation is better than forced separation. Forced separation cannot make anyone happy, but by mutual consent or by the Vedic arrangement, one must separate from his family affairs at a certain age and fully depend on Krishna. This makes one's life successful. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swabrantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadatara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vagisha Yasya Vadhane Lakshmir Yasya Chavakshasi Yasya Dheridaye Samvit Tam Narasimham Maham Vaje Pralada Ridayaladam Bhakta Vitya Vidaram Sharatindurachim Vande Parintra Vandanam Harim. Translation once more. Sometimes the merchant in the forest wants to climb the hills and mountains, but due to insufficient footwear, his feet are pricked by small stone fragments and by thorns on the mountain. Being pricked by them, he becomes very aggrieved. Sometimes a person who is very attached to his family becomes overwhelmed with hunger, and due to his miserable condition, he becomes furious with his family members. So Jada Bharat continues to give metaphors. Metaphors are helpful to get an image, to look at things in a perhaps a bit in a way that is easier to grasp. If you have like an image that we can imagine in our minds. So obviously there's a very pessimistic perspective on what we call family life. He compares the mountains. The merchant is like trying to climb with the family, wife and children. And the way is, how to say, it's very much difficult because there are many small stone fragments that cut into the feet and thorns. And somehow or other, the merchant does not have footwear, which is interesting. If you think of it, why doesn't he have footwear? If you go to the mountains, particularly in Switzerland, we have people developed so much professional equipment that you can be very comfortable walking mountains and difficult paths. But I think a metaphor is telling us that we are not actually really equipped to master all the challenges of material life. It is meant to be a struggle, we can say it like that. And it may feel unfair, and we think, why? And this points to the actual purpose of the creation, that Krishna intends to give us an opportunity to reconsider our consciousness, to say, listen, you try to be very independent and enjoy this world independent from me, from God, but this is unnatural. So this is our base from which we come philosophically. We understand we are in this world not because we are from this world. We are in this world to learn something about ourselves. Particularly the human form of life is considered very valuable, very precious, because we have a developed consciousness which allows us to practice some form of self-realization. We particularly practice bhakti yoga, the path of devotional service to the Lord, with the aim to reawaken our consciousness in terms of who am I, meaning I'm a spirit soul living in this body. Like we have now coverings, we dress like this, you know. We also consider the body a covering of the soul, which we have changed already many times. You know, it's not our real identity. It's a temporary, apparent identity, we can say. That we have changed. We changed late at the point of death, and then we assume a new one. And the idea is to get back to the original identity of spiritual self in relationship to God, the supreme self. So, but we have this powerful energy called Maya that strongly impresses upon us the idea that we can live happily in this world. That's why we try so hard. We can really say everyone tries hard. Like it's, Srila Prabhupada, I think called it very, accurately, struggle for existence. When he speaks of life in the material world, he always calls it struggle for existence. We here in Switzerland, for example, or generally in Europe, are rather comfortable compared to other parts of the world. You know, we don't have to. We also have our worries, of course. No one is free of worries, but our worries sometimes compared to worries people have in other parts of the world are very little. In German, you also say "klagen auf hohem Niveau." It means lamenting on a high, high niveau. So, if you understand that, like that, it's natural that there are difficulties and struggles. So we can also take a different perspective on it. Because here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the man, the father, at some point becomes very frustrated because his attempts are frustrated. He wants to climb the mountain, means making family happy, maintain the family properly. Although nowadays, of course, the society changed. It's not only the man who is provider, can also be the woman. Whoever is in the role of the provider is struggling like this. Also many women nowadays, they're responsible alone for the children because the man left out of some reason, or, So whenever you're in this role of trying to maintain, protect, it's struggle. Unless you are really blessed with a karma that allows you to be comfortable, financially have security, and it's a different story. But here, Prabhupada points a number, almost 99% of the population is unhappy. So we could look at it metaphorically, saying practically everyone. If you look at it empirically, you might beg to differ, like, are there studies to support that? So, of course, there's a spectrum, always a range of happiness, unhappiness, and if you would go to different places and ask and different people and make some research, you may come up with different numbers. But essentially, as we said before, the attitude also that is presented in the Bhagavatam is a skepticism toward material life. It's not encouraged. Yes. And I want to make a connection to the Bhagavad Gita. Some people, some devotees maybe have in mind the verse in the 15th chapter, verse 7, Mavaivam sho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manashashtanindriyani prakristani karshati. Here Krishna explains that we all, as spiritual sparks and beings, are his parts and parcel, eternal fragmental parts, it said. Eternal means timeless, Fragmental means they're very, very tiny. There's even a concrete number given in the scriptures. A 10,000th part of the tip of a hair. So it's very tiny. We cannot perceive it by senses. And he said, due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. Because the suffering we experience within the mind. This frustration. And I work in the field of psychiatry, and as a therapist, I have, of course, a lot of contact with the frustrations of life people have. And here, like in this metaphor, it becomes, for me, also visible again how there's a dissonance with how we look at the world, what we expect from it, and what we are capable to do. One part, like one way how depression can develop is if there's a constant mismatch, so to speak, between the expectations I have or expectations that are put on me and the capacities I have to fulfill them. Often there's a difference like that, like my capacity is here, but I expect like this. In terms of performance in work, I can, or some people overestimate the capacity to maintain children. We had sometimes patients, they have like 5, 6 or whatever children, and they're completely overwhelmed with it. You know, or like other stuff where we do not see where is our limit. And this brings frustration, and this can lead up to a strong sense of disempowerment, up to really deep depression, because we feel so helpless, overwhelmed. It's like, yeah, we are on a way with thorns and stones that are really cut our feet, and we don't have the shoes that we would need to walk rather safe and comfortable. So therefore it's something very important to always reflect upon one's own ambitions in material life and whether it makes really sense to pursue those ambitions. There's always a price for it, and of course, in one way also, the material world is made like you got to work for something that you want. Unless, of course, you have the karma, it falls into your lap, you know, maybe by you inherit a lot from your parents and you have it easy. But usually people still got to work to maintain it then, to get it. But here, the idea is that usually we are facing a world that is more powerful than us and which is not intending to make us happy. Also material nature is that it's not intending actually to make us happy. It's more like about correcting or rectifying the consciousness of trying to have God's property independent from God. This is essentially the idea, that we understand this world is Krishna's energy, I'm Krishna's energy, but I live in a state of mind where I separate that from God. So that's the how to say, the basis for how the drama of material life is set. So therefore, here also Srila Prabhupada, in the purport of this verse, he emphasizes the word karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He's bound by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in his material existence. So the mind is actually the place where the struggle happens. We just addressed that, and that there is cognitive dissonance between our expectations and our capacities. We can also maybe see that in spiritual life, in our practice, depending on how you came to Krishna consciousness, what your services have been, or whatever you went through in terms of experience. I just remember back then when I came to Krishna consciousness and lived at the ashram, of course we went out like doing book distribution. It was anyway the service. It's always like, this is the thing. You go and distribute books. And I struggled very much on the streets. It's always said, then you are mental. If you are not allowed to say focus, enthusiastic, and it kind of flows, and you feel having doubts or feeling not inspired, that's considered being mental. So get off the mental platform practically, and be determined to it. And I just remember, for me, it was very strugglesome for the mind, because I felt not that's really my thing. I didn't felt like that's so, I don't know, it was not what I had in mind. When I actually got to know Krishna consciousness philosophy, I guess I assumed more of a monastic life. My first festival was Simhachalam in Germany, Bavarian farm, beautiful Narasimha deity. And I had different ideas what practicing Krishna consciousness would mean. So we went to India first and did some, went to Vrindavan, different places, some pilgrimage. And coming back and then being in a preaching mission. And also other stuff, like until I got accustomed to the lifestyle, to the like getting up early, doing like your discipline, so to say, practicing the discipline. There was some stuff that really inspired me. So, but struggling is always there, because we have a condition. We have a mental conditioning, a physical conditioning, and then when we are confronted with expectations in terms of what to do, how to live, how to be, then we might have like strong dissonance or like discrepancy, and this means struggle. Means like we really fried or frustrated, and then we are wanted to overcome that. So that's part of spiritual life. It's inconvenient, but the discipline or sadhana bhakti means to try to not be stopped by these discrepancies. And that's easier said than done. And it's maybe a task for years. It's not done, yeah, we'll do that a few weeks or a few months and then I have it. There might be periods where things go smooth. We always also say Krishna gives mercy according to, we don't understand actually according to what when it comes to us, maybe by the blessings of the devotees or blessings of the spiritual master. And sometimes things are very tough to do, because also it's the nature of material life that goes up and down. There's unsteadiness, it's asat. You know, there's no permanency in circumstances, in condition. Everything is constantly in a change. And we try to, also one thing we struggle with, like the man here in the metaphor, is trying to keep a balance, to keep it steady. If I have a position of income, which I feel is good, okay, let me secure it, let me maintain it. If there's some state of physical being where I feel, oh, that's comfortable, that's attractive, that's enjoyable, let me maintain it. That's the same thing. We always try to hold on to a certain state of existence that is comfortable, which is natural because the soul is actually an eternal being, which is eternally happy in an eternal position. But it doesn't work in the material world. And here again, these are the stone fragments and the thorns on the mountain that cut in our feet. Ah, damn it! Again, and we struggle and we suffer. So until we understand that what we are trying is not realistic, the underlying belief is I can have a happy life in this world for a long time. Maybe some people think forever. So we are always painfully reminded it's not possible. And then we call the devotees then tend to, also Krishna asks you to surrender, you know, or as we say in German, surrendern, because there's some slang, you know, people tend to, in German, to use a lot of English words. Du musst surrendern. You have to, you're supposed to overcome your mental state and be fixed in your endeavors, in your service to the Lord. And if you look at the development of ISKCON, like since Prabhupada founded it, like we have a comfortable situation now, but the pioneers back then, the early disciples, they went to a lot more struggle to how to say, construct and develop that, what we nowadays call the ISKCON movement worldwide. In this purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions the Krishna Balaram Monday. He says, there's no benefit in transferring from one forest to another. One must go to the Vrindavan forest and take shelter of Govinda. That will make one happy. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is therefore constructing a Krishna Balaram temple to invite its members as well as outsiders to come and live peacefully in a spiritual atmosphere. So this is in the early 1970s when this was written, the purport. Obviously, the Krishna Balaram Mandir was not constructed yet. And there's also on YouTube you find there's a nice there's a playlist which collects like memories of devotees from the time who still give some testimony about like how things went. And one thing was, of course, at the beginning there were no resources. There was land in Vrindavan. Prabhupada had a vision there should be a temple, but there were no funds. Where's the money coming from? There was not even a clear concept how will the temple look like. And there was no such thing as like cement and all that. And imagine back then, India in the early 70s was still a different situation than now. And so the devotees share how like gradually these things came. And there was one disciple of Prabhupada, Guru Kripa Swami, and then they made an effort to go to Japan. They had some Namahatta project, and it's also said they worked very hard. Let's say again, struggle. There's so many challenges to master, and they collected a lot of money, which brought the funds that the Krishna Balaram Mandir could be started. And also Srila Prabhupada, like, I think we can't even appreciate or comprehend what kind of challenges he met and mastered by doing this project alone. You know, there was in India anyway, there's so many challenges. Bombay was started first, and there were some legal issues, there were court cases. And then in Vrindavan, he had a lot of struggle. He struggled with the Goswamis, for example, in Vrindavan, or like those caste Goswamis. He got criticized a lot. How can you initiate mlechas, you know, people who are meat eaters and completely out of the Vedic, how to say, understanding of civilized society? Brought them to India and recognized them as Brahmins, and this was like blasphemy. Too many people there. And also otherwise, you know, of course there was envy from his god brothers. In Mayapur he struggled a lot with that. So Srila Prabhupada there were a lot of, say, thorns and stones on his way he had to walk, which he had to master. So I think we can appreciate, if we hear about that, we can also appreciate more what is action, what he has built actually. And not just him, but also his disciples. May it be this Guru Kripa Swami. And there was one of his disciples, Surabi Prabhu. He was mainly in charge of constructing also the Krishna Balaram Mandir and so on. And so many devotees made so many efforts. And this is also similar. There's also maybe the same struggle or even worse struggle than in some family life. But here we must consider a different perspective. As it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, first chapter, I think it's, I forgot the verse, but number. Dharma svanushtita pumsam vishvakshena kadasuya notpadyayet yadi ratim shramaeva kevalam. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So struggle itself is not the issue. It's what you struggle for. Because struggle is always there. And the result matters. If your struggle leads you to simply depression, as we discussed before, you know, because you feel a dissonance between what your desires and your capacity, or if it leads to God consciousness, to get the blessings of the Lord because you sacrifice something of yourself willingly. Devotional service means to dedicate your life energy. Srila Prabhupada also talked sometimes metaphorically, we have to shed gallons and gallons of blood, which doesn't mean he intended to go to war and kill people, right? It's about also the effort, the work. We also say you sweat, like you give your sweat, your blood, your everything to build something for Krishna. And I don't know if I see myself, I wouldn't be able to go to the India of the 70s with nothing and try to build up something there. For me, it would be a nightmare. I don't know if I would be capable to do that. So, but those devotees with strong faith in Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada with his vision and his spiritual potency, he made it possible that in Vrindavan, for example, ISKCON was established. He built a door for the Westerners to enter Vrindavan. Because then he got recognized when the temple was built. And also he endured many things he was not happy with. There was always delays in India, and he was not happy. And he chastised the Surabi Prabhu a lot. The Surabi Prabhu struggled, for example, with hardly getting any sleep. Because there's so much demand on, like, things has to be done. There's so many problems arising. And this is something we can consider. That there's, for example, you see videos. If you watch the videos, they're beautiful. There's a lot of nice footage when Krishna Balaram Mandir started, also from the initiation ceremony. It was opened in Ram Navami, I think, April 20th, 1975. Krishna Balaram temple was opened. And you see Prabhupada's, in the middle of the whole ceremony, he engaged the Brahmins, the local Brahmins, to do all the installation rites, but he wasn't happy at all. He didn't look happy. And also the devotee who commented, like, whose memory or his testimony was audible, he also said, like, yeah, he endured that, but he was not feeling that this is really the thing. You know, it's more like ritualistic spirituality. And he instructed his disciples to 24-hour kirtan. This will actually install the deity. So seeing all that and hearing all that, I felt much more appreciation for what Srila Prabhupada went through, what sacrifices he made. And considering this verse that talks about how material life, particularly family life, is a struggle, and that it's important to struggle for the right thing, because our life energy is limited. And talking of depression, some people dedicate a lot of their life and energy to something that goes well for a long time. May it be their own family, a company, whatever they dedicate themselves to. But then get very frustrated at the end when the dream is scattered, or like when things change, or like suddenly the realization is there. There's nothing really left inside of me, or like this, it didn't bring me any lasting benefit. I invested myself so much, for example, in other people, but there's, ungratefulness in the world. It's not reciprocated, for example, or at the end you still feel like you gained not really something from it. So in spiritual life, though, it's that eternal benefit. If you once really dedicated your life or like some life energy to sincerely serving Krishna and Guru, then this will never be lost. It will benefit you forever. Practically, maybe in the next life it will be more visible than in this life. But this is the idea. That's our faith. That we try to dedicate this energy. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to this verse that we just quoted from the Srimad Bhagavatam, above these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and the mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. Again, but above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. So we enter another layer of like the frustration where it comes from. We serve the wrong thing. You know, if you're in a material consciousness, if you serve the body only, or like the bodies of the people we are connected with, there will be no benefit from it at the end. Just frustration. For some time there's happiness, maybe there's some harmony, there's some connectedness. Prabhupada used this phrase, family, friendship, and love. And it has some temporary manifestations. But at the end, the true benefactor must be the soul, and we must ask, what is the benefit for the soul, for the self? And Srila Prabhupada highlights that further in the purport. The need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. Right? This is also a very crucial theme in spiritual life, liberation. There are different considerations what liberation can be. We of course mean going back to Godhead, being liberated from material existence. Not liberation in the sense of I cease to exist in the oneness of what it is, He continues, he wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. And I find it so beautiful and clear how Srila Prabhupada points to what is the actual self-interest. Because self-realization requires understanding what is the self and what does the self need. I need to realize, means to put into a practical application what the self needs. And that's what we are endeavoring here, also in this practice of Bhakti Yoga, in this movement. And from another lecture when Srila Prabhupada spoke on, also 1975, the year, I was actually close to when the Krishna Balaram Mandir was opened, second canto, second chapter, verse 6. He says, Krishna, is so kind that he is by his own nature, by his habit, he's accompanying you as friend, just to save you, just to save you. You are rotting in this material world, and Krishna, God, is within your heart, just to look forward when you will say, Krishna, now I have finished my business, please save me. He's simply waiting, and he says, Sarva Dhamman Parityaja, you rascal, you are simply suffering, you give up all this nonsense engagement, you surrender unto me. I shall give you protection. Maybe you want to hear that class, when you hear him saying that in his way, it's like, resonates differently, right? Because it comes from Srila Prabhupada, like, how to say, you get a good picture, because we spoke before of pictures from metaphors, a good picture if you see the footage and also hear the devotees who were with him share their experiences with him, because you get a sense how Srila Prabhupada was such a loving, caring, and also humble personality, but achieving such great things. He was even so humble when Krishna Balaram Mandir was opened and ceremonies were going on. There was one Mataji was sharing, he was rather in the back, and Prabhupada, like physically he was not tall, he was rather short, small. And so many devotees stand in front of him. And I think she attempted to somehow or other that devotees make space that he can see the darshan or the deities, but somehow or other he was just fine with being in the background and being humble, like this. And so many, some short impressions how they share. Like one devotee, one Mataji, the mother of hers, to her surprise, asked her, "Can I do something? Give something you that you can give to your spiritual master?" She said, "I don't know. What would you like to give?" And then I don't remember the type of fruit. This word was new to me, but some kind of jam she made. And then she brought the jam to Srila Prabhupada, or like gave it to the servant. And actually, for 2 days, the servant then of Srila Prabhupada searched out this lady, this Mataji, and Srila Prabhupada expressed through the servant also that he was very pleased with the jam, because somehow or other it was a jam his mother used to make also, and he even made the effort to write a letter to the mother of this devotee to thank her for the jam, And also make sure the mother knows we take very nicely care of your daughter and stuff. So this is, in many ways, you see that how Prabhupada cared about so much detail and was so personal, although he had unlimited, so many disciples and so many people to deal with. So he was truly a loving, caring person, like a father, because here in this metaphor the father figure is mentioned, and he went to so much struggle also with his disciples, but he remained a very caring spiritual master. Who was for many very fatherly. He was like taking care of them, and so there's so much to learn from this personality. So this is. Yes, of course, one could talk about like the retirement at the age of 50, but I think we leave it here. And I open up for comments and questions. Hare Krishna. Do we need a...
Thank you very much for your lecture. When you were mentioning how Srila Prabhupada's disciple would push on the movement so much, I kind of feel guilty because we don't have this spirit anymore, and I like to be comfortable. And what would you say on that? Like, is it good that this spirit is not there anymore? Like, of course, many people were burning out in that spirit as well, but what should we do to actually follow the footsteps of Prabhupada and to give our best and not to cross our boundaries?
Thank you for the question. I think it's natural. This happens. It's not to be avoided. I think there's always a time if something new started, a movement, where there's nothing yet manifest, and then there is the pioneer works. There are also particular people who, like, are even cut out for this particular maybe phase of things, you know. And then if there's no need of so much so much urgency to struggle, if something is established, naturally maybe some complacency comes, or like some, you know, a bit the mood changes, because the circumstances change. And of course, what we can do is to maybe rekindle or reinvoke the spirit of Prabhupada, is to first of all stay also absorbed in his teachings, and, like, let's say, revive also the memories, try to get a glimpse, to catch the mood, and to ask yourself what I'm equipped with, and how can I put that in Prabhupada's service. At the end, still, there's, like, in our time and circumstances, there are other challenges perhaps to take on, you know, other, struggles that can be approached. So perhaps also Krishna Prem Rupa wants to say something on that, because he also took up some duties here, like some struggles. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. I mean, yeah, as you said, I think like in such a religious institution like this goes through different phases, certainly. And maybe sometimes, you know, we're on one extreme and then it goes in the other extreme. So we have to balance. But on an individual level, I think the more we realize what we got, the more we feel inspiration to give. Like, if we actually understand what gift we received from Prabhupada and what it means to be a devotee and to practice Krishna consciousness, the more you understand, then naturally you would want to share with others. And naturally you feel like ready to dedicate yourself for a greater cause. Like Prabhupada disciples, they often speak of the burden of love. Mm-hmm. Why are they serving as a GPC? Why they're doing this and that? You know, it's a burden of love, because out of love they're doing it. Because they like to see Prabhupada's movement flourishing. And continuing. So I think it's something natural that can come if we properly follow Krishna consciousness. Then naturally it will come. Yeah.
You know, when you say that, also, I think if something is established, the struggle is more in maintaining it properly. Maintaining not just like having financial resources, but maintaining also a certain mood and lifestyle, you know, because if you look at the history also of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada was always very concerned to keep the purity of the teachings, for example, the purity of the lifestyle, because so many influences are there and people like maybe come up with, this is my version of Krishna consciousness, or, you know, of course we have different capacities to practice, but I think one thing is also to stay authentic and to not, how to say, water down, for example, the philosophy for the sake of being more accepted or more politically correct or more, you know, but it's more also about, how to say, staying loyal to what was taught, even if it's inconvenient in terms of, you know, what people in a certain time, what the spirit is of the time. You know, of course, there needs to be also maybe some adjustment. Prabhupada also taught that time, place, circumstances need to be considered. But I think these are also challenges we have. We don't have the challenge to build a temple, but we have a challenge to try to integrate this, what we have, in an acceptable way in the society. You know, and you are very much
I fully
dedicated.
I fully agree with what you say. At the same time, I remember His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, the last days before he left this world, he very much encouraged devotees to engage in preaching mission also. You know, I did some research, like in German-speaking area, there is 92 big cities. Big cities means cities with over 100,000 people. And then 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 people. And a few million cities now with million people. But 92 cities is a lot. And how many centers do we have? How many temples do we have? In a way, we're still in a very much pioneer phase. Like, there's a lot to do. You know, like basically every member could go into some city and start a project there. And it's true. It's regrettable. It's not, the spirit is not anymore so much there. Like in the early days, all the members of the movement, they had that kind of spirit. Let us spread Krishna consciousness. Let's do something for the mission. Nowadays, I mean, who of us has this meditation? Like if you look at, I don't know, in Switzerland maybe we have 500 initiated devotees or so. How many of these 500 initiated devotees, they constantly think, how can we, you know, expand, how can we share Krishna consciousness? Most devotees are just busy with their own lives, which is understandable in some way, but in the other way, where is the mission, you know? So certainly there is, you know, it would be nice to at least bring back some of the spirit in a sense of trying to encourage devotees to be more active in some way of sharing Krishna consciousness. That's just at the other side of the story. And of course, I fully agree with you. It also has to do with becoming more mature, boiling the milk, and maintaining what we have, and you know, protect and maintain. That's the other side also. So ideally, we would have both. It would be nice.
Yes. Thank you. Anything else?
This was your first Bhagavatam class, no? Yes, you have a question?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. You said that it's important to keep the authenticity of the way that things were written and thought about and said back then, but it makes it very difficult to maintain a mission in a changing world. Even to me it sounded, you also said, oh, families have look different these days. There's a lot of things, and you also mentioned politically correct. There's so many things that just ring wrong in ears that are not Krishna conscious yet. But how do you want to deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, for once it requires, some maturity and some absorption. First of all, one has to get a good understanding what is actually taught. because something that also happened in the past, based on superficial understandings and kind of selective kind of philosophical, approaches, there were a lot of, unnecessary conflicts, or even, but people were misguided in directions. So it's important to understand the principle of something, whatever philosophical principle is taught, and then to look at how can this principle be applied in our time and circumstance. Your Prabhupada, for example, he made many concessions from the traditional way Krishna consciousness was practiced. For example, it was unheard of that women get initiated the way they get here, that they serve on the altar, that they give classes and so on. So he already adjusted many things according to how things were, because based on the essential principle, always looking from the spiritual perspective of the soul and not from the material perspective of the body and its particular qualities. So there he revolutionized many things. So I think we should understand in a careful way what is the demand of a time, and again this requires maturity, and also good understanding what is the actual philosophy. So that and it's a more of a complex business, so to say.
What do you mean by maturity?
Maturity is for once as a person that you are that you're grounded in life. That you're someone who has both feet on the ground, that you have some life experience and some solid understanding of philosophy, that you have been through trainings, that you have been through study, that you have shown that you really grasp the texts, and not that you just in some fanatic enthusiasm, picking up on some ideas and then try to convince the world, do this, All right?
Question. The verse that you showed us was the part of the family was very prominent, that one should let go of the family, or the purport that you read. And I'm not sure how much that was literal and how much that is also a metaphor, because you spoke mostly about metaphors and images after that.
Yeah. In this verse and purport, the traditional system is addressed, what is called Varnashrama Dharma. And in this system, the idea is that the husband leaves at the age of 50 through some retired spiritual life, provided, that's the idea, children are there, particularly sons, which take over responsibility for also the wife, the mother. So it's not like that he just leaves and I don't care, but it's more about that there's a whole arrangement that everyone is still taken care of, protected, but that the man is supposed to fulfill other duties, which then also the family benefits from if they support him in that. So it's not in that sense metaphorically, but effectively in this time and age, hardly anyone does that or can do that. So it's more like a concept that is there, which is embedded in a whole lifestyle and a whole system of Vedic civilization. But then we have on the other side civilization and life as it is now, and there are some possibilities for some part of it and some impossibilities. Hardly anyone goes to Vanaprastha. It's not. It's a bigger concept. Perhaps you can also exchange with the devotees in between that, because what it requires to be a so-called Vanaprastha, someone that's Vana means also forest, because the forest is mentioned here, and Vanaprastha means someone who retires to the forest, lives a very simple life, and this alone, it's just not happening, unless you maybe. If you live in India, it's also different in terms of climate, but then also. Is it really necessary is the other thing. You can also stay in a position in family life, and it's okay to practice Krishna consciousness like that. What Krishna Prabhu wants.
It's interesting. There's just Devaki and also Jayadvaita Maharaj just writing books on this topic, Vanaprastha, right? And of course, as you said, we don't see people running around in tree barks, clothing, and going to the forest. But I think in a Western world, we have this concept: you work hard, and then at the end of the life, you can enjoy. You know, there's pension, and then you just go to Mallorca, sitting on the beach, and enjoy. You know, then you actually enjoy your life after when you become old. But the Vedic conception is that you voluntarily renounce enjoyment and family life, and in the old age you focus on specifically on spiritual life. And in this way you prepare yourself for death, because death is a crucial point for if you can attain perfection. So I think it has to do with voluntarily, because the body, you become weaker, you become old, you become sick. It's natural that towards the old age, kind of, you have to let go of things, and Vedic lifestyle is just encouraging that with your advanced age, you focus more on spirituality. That's kind of the principle, and then the detail, of course, we have to see how much it can be applied as it's described in Scripture. But the principle is kind of still important. The detail might be not so applicable today. Is that okay? Or would you agree?
Yes, no.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I think we got to round it up here, but of course you can, because I think the time I'm supposed to stop at. Thank you very much. Grantwat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Kesava, Madhava, Prabhu ki jai.